And we will keep working to hold everyone involved accountable. Also, special thanks to the State's Attorney's Office for their efforts in working with us to bring these charges with our detectives. In regards to this case, the 19-year-old Tyshawn, that's T-Y-S-H-O-N, Tyshawn Brownlee, B-R-O-W-N-L-E-E, of Oak Park was charged with the following: 1 felony count of attempted first-degree murder, 1 felony count of armed robbery with a discharge of a firearm, and 4 felony counts of armed robbery with a firearm. He was arrested on May 15th after being identified as one of the offenders who robbed the 23-year-old victim in the 1300 block of West Webster in the 18th District on May 6th. He was also charged in connection with several other armed robberies that occurred in the 19th District on May 5th and 6th, in addition to these charges I've listed. This is Brownlee's, all of these charges together are Brownlee's first adult arrest. This arrest is due to diligent work by the Area 3 detectives, and I can't say enough about the work that our detectives do in the Bureau of Detectives, who comb through hours and hours of video surveillance footage and looked at recent crime patterns in the area to identify this offender. We're still working to identify and apprehend anyone else involved in this shooting and robbery pattern. I want to emphasize also, again, the great detective work in this case as we continue to bring violent offenders to justice. And we won't stop investigating until each of these offenders are found. I also want to highlight the importance of security camera footage across the city, like the ones that helped lead to this arrest. Residents can register their home security or private business cameras with the Chicago Police Department to assist us in this effort by logging on to www.chicagopolice.org/camera registration, one word. That's www.chicagopolice.org/camera registration, one word. And it's plain to see that these cameras are important tools in our public safety effort. They help us solve crimes faster, but more importantly, they help us bring violent offenders off our street to justice. Before State's Attorney Kim Foxx comes up, I want to repeat that we will not tolerate violence in this city. Too many precious lives are being hurt or taken away because of a sheer disregard for human life, and that is unacceptable. So we'll continue to work closely not only with the State's Attorney's Office, but also with our local and federal law enforcement partners to prevent more people and more families from experiencing senseless gun violence. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kim Foxx, our State's Attorney. Kim.
Good morning. First and foremost, like to wish Dakota Early, the culinary arts student who also worked at the Greater Chicago Food Depository, well in his recovery. As the superintendent said, we as a city and a county are rallying for his well-being. We recognize that the road ahead for him is long, but again, I wish him a strong recovery. As the superintendent has noted, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office has approved charges related to Tyshawn Brownlee, and he will be in Central Bond Court this afternoon. Central Bond Court starts at noon, and you can live stream the bond court at the Chief Judge's website, and we can update each of you on the judge's decision and provide a proffer as to what was stated in bond court, which will have more details about the arrests and the evidence in this case. As the superintendent indicated, Brownlee is charged with 1 charge of attempted murder and a charge of armed robbery in the attack of Mr. Early. He is also charged with 4 other counts of armed robbery and a string of attacks from May 5th and May 6th. In these instances involving this defendant, we have 5 innocent victims and a community that has been terrorized. As the superintendent has said, and I will repeat, this is simply unacceptable. I want to thank the Chicago Police Department and the detectives who have worked on this case, as well as the assistant state's attorneys that have worked with them, alongside them, to bring us to this moment. The people of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office will continue in the prosecution of this effort to hold this offender accountable and bring some measure of justice to our communities for this horrific, horrific event. With that, I'll turn it back over to the superintendent.
We'll take a few questions on topic first and then a few off topic. And some we won't have updates on. We'll get with you offline. So she was first. Yeah. Well, I'll bring up Chief of Detectives Brendan Dinahan to add a little bit more flavor on the why we think this one led to a shooting while others likely did not. Brendan, just add a little bit more flavor. Thanks.
Sure. So for this particular case, I mean, and as you can see with a lot of the robberies that happen throughout the city, a lot of times these crews become more violent as they go along. So for this specific case, you could almost hear on the video, he takes the victim's phone, then he starts asking for the passcode. And so I can't tell you specifically, is that the reason? You know, obviously the victim in this case, you know, fought back. I mean, it was his initial instincts. You guys can see on the video, his initial instincts are to fight back, and then immediately it leads to this shooting. So specifically as to like what's the exact reason why this defendant at this time chose to shoot him that quickly, you know, I won't comment on that. He did make a confession to the incident, and as the state's attorney said, a little bit more information will be coming out at bond court. But a lot of times what happens with these robbery crews in general is they become more and more violent as they go along, and then a lot of times when somebody does fight back, they obviously have these firearms, and as you can see, are willing to use them.
And that's a great segue into a re-emphasis of what I said in my comments about camera registrations, how important technology is to get these people off the street faster and faster. Because every moment after these crimes, the potential for the violence to escalate, given just a robbery that doesn't seem to appear to solicit violence, turns violent as time goes on. So register your cameras, both your private and business cameras, so we can continue our efforts at taking these people off the street pretty quick. Yes, you're next. Yes. Yeah, so, yeah, again, I'm going to start out with just saying what I already said about the dedication it takes to sit and look at not only the cameras of video footage of this incident, it's going back and trying to put together patterns of robberies to see if there are similar offenders in the video footage. So you're looking at hours and hours of video footage of other crimes in those areas that may not necessarily be a direct connection right away, but end up being connected because you're looking at hours of video from previous robbery patterns across the city to see if there's one similar offender or one similar piece of clothing or one similar tennis shoe, anything that's similar in video footage, looking back in time at previous robberies. So that really is the dedicated work that it takes for our detectives to just really go and into the video of all of our pod cameras, all the private cameras, whether that's a business or residence, near and around previous robberies or other types of crimes similar in nature. Yes. No, that's from a previous incident at a different time. I believe sometime last year. So that's not related to this incident. We can, and Brenda can just get with you offline. Are you ready now, Brenda? Yeah, we can talk a little bit about it now, but this is not related to this incident. This is related to a previous incident downtown. Yep, that's right.
So he did get shot, but basically what happens is for the investigation, as the superintendent mentioned. So on the 6th of May is when this incident occurred. Detectives immediately go to work, and to answer your question, previous robbery victim's credit card is used at a location. The detectives are working with video, and based upon, as the detective mentioned, the detective division working with the patrol officers, a lot of intelligence is gathered and generated, and it was a remarkable job. I know a lot of times we push the video out to you guys asking for the public to make an identification. For this specific incident, detectives were familiar with this individual and were able to make an identification. And at that point, he was a suspect, in our crime. He was shot, I think, I don't have it in front of me, I think it was the 10th of May maybe that he was shot near the Bean. And what happened, that was on, it was the 10th of May, and it was, happened during the midnight hours. And as you can imagine, I mean, we have 1,000 detectives, so the detective was assigned on a midnight case, doesn't necessarily know, what the robbery guys are doing during the day, obviously. With that said, I will say, once again, the Area 3 detectives did a great job. Once they figured out that he was shot and at the hospital, and we came back, and the detective division put it all together, we immediately went back to the hospital, but he had left the hospital as quickly as possible, probably understanding, what was happening as well. So we were not able to effect an arrest that night, and we went on and continued to gather more information, and we eventually had a positive identification from one of the previous victims of the robbery. At that point, the detectives went to go effect the arrest, and they were able to eventually arrest him and obviously get him charged.
We can't. I prefer not to. It's a slippery slope with its juvenile protections under state law. Yes, sir, you had a question? I don't know. I'm listening to what you quote him saying it may have been. So speculation, what we're talking about are facts. Go with the facts. All right. You're always going to be good going with the facts. Mike Browser. Yes.
Brownlee got shot.
At the time he was shot on the 10th? Do we know that yet? Let's not talk about it right now. We'll get with you offline. And maybe wait till after bond court where you'll get more information about the details of all of this, and then we'll revisit what we can talk about later. Yes, last question. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get you, so you and then you. Yeah.
I just want to clarify. So he had already been identified prior to him being shot.
So I don't have the exact timeline. Obviously, I don't have the photo right in front of me on when he was specifically identified. What I can tell you is he was a person of interest within the robbery investigation, and when he was shot, when the midnight detective went out to interview him, and when he came back and the detective division was putting everything together, like, let's go back and talk to this guy. I will get you the exact timeline, offline, but that's basically what occurred, and the detective division realized, hey, this is our suspect, and at that point, when we went back, he had already fled from the hospital. He was arrested in Oak Park, and I don't know if I have the time or the date. He was arrested in Oak Park at his residence, approximately 2 days ago.
May 15th.
Thank you.
We'll follow with you offline on the further details. Last series of questions. Go ahead. So, again, we talked about this extensively regarding large teen gatherings. Initially, there's a flyer on Instagram or Facebook or some other platform for teens to gather. We monitor open source social media for those types of flyers. As soon as we get those, usually we get those before the weekend. But sometimes we don't get them till the weekend. But as soon as we get them, we put together an operation plan. Chief Dinahan is here. Chief McDermott is here, Chief of Patrol. He's tasked with putting together those plans. Once the Bureau of Detectives, Bureau of Counterterrorism, all get that intelligence information that's supposed to social media posting, and then we put together a plan. Now, you know, Brian, you don't get a chance to talk about all the work you do behind the scenes, but you want to talk a little bit about once we get those posts, how we put together those plans. Just get a little bit more than we've been able to talk about here recently.
So without getting very specifics about the plans, there is a lot of coordination that goes on, especially assigning additional resources, not just from the Bureau of Patrol, but undercover officers from the Bureau of Counterterrorism, Detective Division personnel, legal officers. We designate arrest teams. We assign transport vehicles. You know, there's multiple command staff members on the scene. To answer your question, have we learned lessons? We have learned lessons. We do after actions after each one of these, and we'll continue to improve as the summer goes on. And, you know, eventually we'll get this right. But when you think of hundreds, if not thousands of teens as we had on Saturday, no matter how many officers we have down there, the situation's always going to be chaotic. So it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be pretty. But we'll continue to improve and do our best.
And lastly, I'll just address this as well. It's not illegal for teens to go to North Beach or anywhere in the city. It's not illegal. But when, you know, young people, or regardless of your age, break the law, we take enforcement action. So initially, the gathering is not reason to start arresting teens, because they haven't done anything illegal. You know, they just gather at a certain location based on a flyer going out over social media. And then we're tasked with being constitutional, following the law, making sure everyone has a great time without, you know, jeopardizing public safety is really the issue. So we're not sitting there standing on our hands and waiting for things to pop. We are engaging these young people, and we're making sure that they follow the laws, but when they do break the law, we take strict enforcement action. That's the last question. Thank you all so very much. I really appreciate it. Every other question, you don't have to shout it out. We will get with you offline. As soon as we walk out, someone will get with you offline to answer any other follow-up questions. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.